Hello and welcome. You're viewing the Citizens Journalist podcast, Mesa County Compass, that brings you the news that you can use from a different point of view. I'm Ruth.
I'm Lisa.
And together we are Mesa County Compass. Our goal is to create an informed, current, active citizenry armed with the facts. We will be covering what's new to you, what it means to you, what you can do about it, and provide you access to the decision makers when we can. Okay, good afternoon. We're here with Mesa County Compass, and today we're shooting this film from the courthouse in the commissioner's
admin conference room.
Admin conference room. Thank you.
Yeah.
We are here with Bobbie Daniel, our county commissioner, and we have some questions to ask Bobbie. Bobbie, if you'll real briefly give us a little bit of your history and just tell us how you got here and that kind of thing. Just brief.
I was voted here. No.
What's wrong with you? Don't you know how county commissioners work?
No. My name is Bobbie Daniel. I'm a Mesa County Commissioner. I've been a commissioner for 2 years, 2.5 years now. And I've really enjoyed my work here. I'm a Mesa County resident. I grew up in Palisade. I was born in Meeker, Colorado, so West Slope native. And we're just from a working class family, and I am very creative. I'm a very solution-oriented person, and I've always done leadership throughout my life. And of course, I'm the oldest of 3 boys too, so older siblings.
So you're bossy.
I have leadership skills.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, so I tell my other daughter who's like me, I'm like, you just have leadership skills. And she likes to talk, so it's a win-win for her. Not so much for the rest of us,
Right.
But yeah, I really think that it's important to be involved, and especially in our society in America, we're given such a beautiful opportunity for self-government, but we have to participate to keep it.
Right.
And I think that you're not going to agree on everything. I mean, I don't agree with my husband on everything, so it's this amazing melting pot of ideas and points of view and open dialogue, and I think that's really valuable in our society. And when you can have those point of views and differencing opinions, you get to land somewhere really special. And I think being a part of that American experiment is so amazing. I love my job. I love what I get to do. I love our community, and I love the people that we get to work with.
Very good.
Very nice. Well, and one of the things that we hear quite a bit, and especially there's like 3 issues right now that are kind of before us, and they always say, well, we're ruining democracy, but we're really a constitutional republic. And what do you see as the difference when somebody says, you're taking down democracy versus a constitutional republic decision?
Yeah, I think people mean well for the most part when they're referencing democracy. In America, we don't have direct democracy. I mean, that spans from, Rome, where, you had this mob rule. So if everyone has an equal vote for direct application, you could just have a mob decision to take away your property rights or to take away your individual rights and enslave a population. So there's the rub. You don't want direct democracy, but so America was formed differently. We wanted people to be able to vote for representation, and then through representative government, and then that's where the laws are being made. And I think that is like a bigger difference. So in a limited constitutional republic is what we have in America. You have a constitution that limits government. It's not limiting people, it's limiting government. It's saying here's the clear defined role of government, and if it is not said in here, then you don't have power over that. The power is held with people in the states. So you have some good checks and balances, and I think the American Foundation is so cool, and I must be like a total geek because I just think it's amazing where you can have all of these checks and balances so many different layers of government that really are built on the aspect of human nature is not changing, you know, and it's not made for angels, it's made for real people. And I think that aspect of it is super fascinating and also really genius. And so I think if people are worried about their democracy or institutions, I would just encourage them to find some good books to read. The Federalist Papers is a really good book to read, just about the intention, the framers, and what they were looking for when they were drafting the Constitution, and just some different elements. You know, they'll talk about human nature, they'll talk about check and balances, check on power, and those levels of government. And I think that really helps people understand what the framers were thinking and how they designed our limited constitutional republic. So, yeah.
And so we'll get into issue number 1.
Yes.
The unfunded mandate and your push, because I think that is also a check and balance between local control and state control, and where their, you know, your ability to push me ends at my nose, you know. So what's your idea on that, and what sort of support are you seeing for that, and kind of explain that to us and how quick we might see that take place?
Yes, unfunded mandates is just really a massive problem right now. Something that when I was a county commissioner, when I was speaking with my department heads, these are people that run our landfills, that are running our road and bridge departments. They're tasked with public health, Department of Human Services. We have so many different departments here in Mesa County, and so I'm hearing from them, the professionals that are overseeing their budgets. And they can plan all day long their budgets, but what they can't plan for is the state legislature to pick something, and it could be good, it could be bad. I mean, I'm not saying it's a bad bill that they're pushing. What I'm saying is it's just not funded. And so something happens at the state legislature, whether it's a bill or it's a regulatory rule from a state agency. So that could also, those two things could affect our county budgets. And so I guess just a real simple example is the state legislature had passed, before I was in office, that landfills had to get a new liner for their landfills. And in one way or another, that cost was $2 million to our landfill. And it was something we weren't planning for. We didn't need it. We didn't need it replaced. So these costs, that's nothing like we can control, but it really affects our budget. And so hearing from our department heads and our local officials just telling me that frustration really started connecting dots for me. And I said, hey, is anyone keeping track of any of this stuff? And there was some nervous giggling, like, no. So I just said, it's okay, like, we're just gonna keep track of it from now on. And so the last 2 years we've been keeping track. And of course, you know, the legislative session will happen, and then there'll be a new kind of mandate from the state. And then we have to tinker and see, okay, how much is this gonna cost us? What are the realities? How does this affect our budget? Kind of have to live with it for a little bit to really see the grand scope of things. And it might cost an extra full-time employee. It might cost time and attention to filling out paperwork. So these unfunded mandates might look a little different. And it's not always a new landfill biter. That's easy to say, this is how much this costs. So tracking these is complex. It does take our department heads, you know, they took them years to really input great data that they can say, this is really what this costs us. And so we've been at $10 million annually for when we've been tracking it. And that's substantial.
It is,
you know?
it is.
Our taxpayer Bill of Rights, our TABOR refunds, just for the county alone, last year was $11.5 million. And that's a huge
It's a huge chunk.
we don't get to keep our revenue that's in excess. We return that back to the taxpayers. So when you account for that, and then on top of the state's unfunded mandates, I mean, that's a huge hit to, a smaller local government's budget. And there are counties that are even smaller than us, and they still have to take on the same laws and those unfunded mandates. So it's going to hit their budgets a little differently too. And then the bigger counties, their budgets are going to look a lot different too, because they have a higher scope and a higher size. And so the same law can't just be equally applied to everybody. They're going to have different impacts. So I started an unfunded mandate tracker tool. We've been able to share that with all 64 counties. And this isn't just a Mesa County issue. All county commissioners across Colorado have really been struggling with this and how it impacts their budgets. And so we've been talking a lot about this issue. We do our Colorado Counties Association we're a part of, and we really are trying to solve these problems and make it better for everybody. So we talk with Democrat counties and Republican counties, and it's all nuts and bolts of budget, and that doesn't change. And so we're all having these really hard conversations, but we need to have it because we can't keep on this trajectory. And it's not necessarily that the legislature themselves, the lawmakers, voted on a bad bill. That's not even what we're saying. The bill might be a great, well-intended bill, but if it doesn't have accurate funding, then we're really doing our local governments a disservice.
Have
Well, you
unintended
can't
consequences.
Yeah.
And you
there's-
can't provide other services because that's
Right.
going to provide a service
Exactly.
for
Local
that.
dollars just don't go as far as they once
No.
did,
I was going to say, there are so many things that we could use here in Mesa County that I see. And I know it's in other counties as well, regardless of political affiliation. It doesn't make any difference.
Yeah.
You got your streets, you've got your regular things that you need to take care of. And with these mandates setting in, that makes you set aside. How do you choose what you set aside?
Right. Yeah, and exactly right. And what's different, in Summit County and their priorities are going to look a little different here. If you're in a resort community, snow removal, county roads, wildfire mitigation, workforce housing, those are some higher needs for your community that you need all the dollars that you have to go towards those high needs. Same thing if you're in Mesa County. We've got Japanese beetle, we have zebra mussels. Our canal system is very unique. There's not a lot of other communities that has what we have.
Right.
And so we need to have those flexible dollars to meet our community's needs immediately and how we are budgeting. And we don't need those decisions made under the dome that are not really true and reflective of real costs. That's all we're asking. Make sure if you guys are going to pass a rule or a regulation, you're going to fund it. If it's that important, then make it important. And I think that sets a different kind of conversation. And then also too, the fiscal notes on these bills are not very accurate. So sure, it may be a nonpartisan legislative fiscal note, but when it says impact to local governments minimal, that means nothing.
Right.
Doesn't
Right.
mean anything. If I can balance a budget, but it's just saying that's minimal,
Yeah.
that doesn't fly. And that's the frustrating part. In Colorado, it's a constitutional requirement that local governments balance their budget. And so we're tasked with a very high level of accountability and responsibility. And we're just asking that that's being really reflective in what's happening in the Capitol.
So how is the Capitol responding to what you said?
Well, I think their big message is we're here to talk. We want to have conversations around this, and I think there is a healthy respect for local government. We're really the boots on the ground in any implementation, whether it's federal or state. We're the ones that are implementing that we're the tie to the community. And so I do think that very excited to have some, maybe not very excited, but they're willing to have
I like that.
some
Yep.
conversations. And I mean, the reality is the Colorado state financial landscape has not looked good in a long time. This is nothing new. Nobody's really surprised. I mean, going into the last legislative session, we were at a $1.2 billion deficit. Now we're in a special session, and the numbers do not look good. And just as a state, fiscal state health is not great. And so when you're talking about here in Mesa County, we have, here's how this has impacted our local community. Here's the population we have. Here's the laws that are not funded. So we could kind of estimate what that looks like for everybody else around the state based on population. And what we've came up with was a really solid number, but 361 million for just counties. I'm not even talking about cities. I don't know what that unfunded mandate looks like for all of the cities and municipalities in Colorado, but just for the 64 counties, $361 million is a substantial amount. And I think that needs to be a part of the conversations as they're moving into a special session and talking about realities of fiscal accountability and what they can do with our tax dollars and what programs need to be reevaluated and how they can be fiscally stable and what that trajectory looks like. I think now is a good time to be having those conversations.
Right.
Do you think that's going to affect the thought about Tabor again?
It is interesting. Republicans really value Tabor. The Taxpayer Bill of Rights is really just consent. We want to make sure that if we're going to have raised taxes, that the people are consenting to that, they're voting on that, and there's some transparency. And then, the growth of government doesn't need to be insane. It needs to track the economy. It needs to really be reflective of what's happening. So Tabor has its issues. It's not always reflective of real-time economy factors, so that's a little different for a community to have to respond in real time is tough. There is a little bit of a ratchet down, so when you're in a really rough part of the economy and you come back up, that calculation is still lower. So you're not really even living in that. It takes a while for government to catch back up. But even with that, it has a useful purpose. But again, it's up to every community to be able to vote on that and whether they value Tabor or not. So we're a Tabor limited county in Mesa County. I think that and again, if that were to change,
the constituency.
It does. And if they want that to change, then they can communicate that through their vote. But yeah, Tabor has been great in a lot of ways. I think it is unfortunate. In the state of Colorado, Tabor has definitely been worked around in a lot of
And how do they do that when they work around Tabor?
Well, they'll call it a fee.
Yes,
So it's not a tax anymore, it's a fee.
Right.
Which
you don't have to put through anybody. You can just add a fee, right?
And I'm not sure the ins and outs on how they are making that work at the Capitol. Our Representative Taggart is amazing. He's on the JBC, the Joint Budget Committee, and so he has a lot of great knowledge on the ins and outs of that. He was able to give a presentation to Mesa County Republican women on the realities of our budget and what that looks like for the state, and he had some really great data, so I think that would be really good to have him on your guys' podcast. But yes, Tabor, even if they kept the Tabor refunds to make up the deficit, it wouldn't even cover half of it. And so there's some reality checks there. It's not a Tabor problem, it is a spending problem.
Exactly.
And, when we were going through COVID, government growth and government spending grew exponentially. And it was frustrating in a lot of ways, because if you have that kind of spending in government, inflation goes crazy. And the regular people, their spending power has now dramatically reduced because inflation's a tax on everybody. And it hurts people with, working, when you have a limited budget and you're on a set budget, your dollars just don't go as far as it used to. And that inflation affects so many people. I know so many people that were thinking about retiring, plan to just retired, then they had to go back in the workforce
Right.
because their dollars just didn't go as far as they used to. And that's the real sad thing about uncontrolled government spending. The federal government doesn't have TABOR. The
Right.
federal government doesn't have, a limit to growth. Here in Colorado, you have to balance your budgets. That's local government and also the state budget. That's not a reality for the federal government.
Right.
Right.
And so there's just differences in how those federal policies affect. But in the American Rescue Plan, the state of Colorado did get a ton of money.
A one-time ton of money,
Yes.
which you funded permanent positions, not you, but
Yes.
permanent positions were funded with it, and you're like,
Yes.
it's once.
Yes, and programs that are not temporary were funded, and I think to the realities of today, a lot can be kind of traced back on how that money was mismanaged.
Exactly.
And if you're, it's tough when, with our ARPA dollars, local governments did receive some. In Mesa County, we did our community centers with that, and we built the Beck Community Center, and we built the Clifton Community Center, and we really were meaningful on that. Let's do it in capital, where it's not these ongoing costs. That we're not creating a program. We're really trying to have an asset for our communities, and that was something that was those community centers. We built Palisade Pool, Mesa, DeBeck. We built Mesa's Community Center, and those were promised community centers in 1982, I believe.
Yes. About the time that Exxon left.
And that's exactly why they didn't get built. It's just the economic
Downside.
situation. We just didn't have the tax dollars for that. So then when we do have the tax dollars in those ARPA funds, that's what we did, is make sure that those promises were kept. And but we were really thoughtful. We didn't just have another government program where we couldn't have sustainability. And I think that means something. And
It does.
And people need to know that. You also had a law that you referenced when you said we don't have to pay those unfunded mandates.
Yes.
And so
Yeah.
how will you apply that?
Yes, so that's a little different. So the federal government, we don't have recourse. We have the Constitution that pretty much is, if they're going to have a program, that they are the ones that are funding it. But here in Colorado, we have the Constitution in Colorado is saying if it's not funded, then counties, local government, they do not have to do it. And so that was really our letter to the governor. We picked 4 laws that have broad financial implications, and we pretty much said these are the laws that they're optional now. These unfunded mandates cannot continue in this way. We're open to conversations. We're open to having more accurate fiscal notes when legislation is being passed. But the Colorado Constitution is on our side here, and we just can't continue like this. So it is lovely that we have some of that checks and balances that you were referencing earlier. So yeah,
So that's great.
it is.
So we'll see what happens with the governor's response to
Yeah,
your-
and then we do have more other counties that we're working with that are going through very similar issues with their budgets, and they're working through the process. And so anytime you're doing any public action with your board of Mesa County or your board of commissioners, you have to take that through legal, risk, finance, have a public discussion with your board in a public setting. You have to notice. So it doesn't always move fast. You can't always respond right now, but it's good for public engagement. So every board of commissioners around Colorado is looking at this. They're seeing what makes sense to them. And we really wanted this to be, this is your letter, this is your communication to the state legislature. Make it thoughtful and important to what's happening in your neck of the woods. So it might look similar to our letter, or it might have some different concerns on there as well. So I really want counties to be able to express what's happening to them and their viewpoint, because again, Summit County is going to look a lot different than Mesa County than the Eastern Plains. So we want to make sure that it's reflective of what's happening in their communities, and
But it seems like the commissioners are, in most counties, are saying, yes, this makes sense. It doesn't matter who we are.
Yeah.
If we don't have money,
I
we
mean,
can't
I
spend
have
it.
not come across anyone who's like, yeah, that's a bad idea.
Yeah,
All right.
that's terrible. We want to pay more.
Yeah.
Why not?
Right, yeah.
We'll just figure out a fee to put on people.
Yeah.
So the other thing that's right up front from yesterday or day before is on the lawsuit against Phil Weiser and Governor Polis. Do
Yes.
you, and many people feel like that is an overreach. Some people feel like it's an overreach by the county, and some people feel
Sure.
like it's an overreach by the state.
Yeah.
And I'd be the one, the state is overreaching
Me
because the
too.
federal government has said
Right.
that, you know, that's the goal.
Yeah.
So what was your thought process, and what do you think is going to happen as a result of this?
Yeah, so we were really fortunate enough to be able to weigh in a way. This has been a real public issue for sure. We actually sued the state last year in April on the same issue. So this
I didn't know that.
unconstitutional, we feel like having local law enforcement, banning them from communicating with federal government agencies is not serving the public. It's not serving public and public safety. So we actually already sued the state on this issue, but it was in state government. And oftentimes when we sue the state, we don't have standing. It's like suing yourself because
Right.
county is
Right,
an
part
arm
of the
of
government.
the state government. So it's not that our argument was wrong. It was, we often just don't have standing. But it is important to have these conversations, and I think it's important to let the courts be able to weigh in. And again, that's that checks and balances. Like, I feel that you have to leverage what you have to make sure that no other agency or branch is stepping outside of that line. And sometimes you need the court system to weigh in on something. Immigration is a federal issue.
Yes.
And, you know, I think it's kind of like trade, or there's other areas of American life that is solely in the realm of national authority. And so Congress...
And it's a national interest.
It is, it is. And if we all 50 states made something different, I mean, it would be chaos. And so there are a few items that are in the Constitution that is saying this is the realm of the federal government. And, you know, you can't have each state making a treaty. That would be a nightmare. And again, the Federalist Papers is very clear
Right.
on the intention of where the framers were making sure that we had these separations of power. And I think that it's really important that we're just very clear. And when states get in the habit of making their own policies in some of these more
Because they disagree.
in
with
more
the federal
serious
government.
issues, yes. And you know, I get it. Like immigration, I mean, in my lifetime, it's kind of been a nightmare. There hasn't been this real push to see real solutions. It's sad when folks are spending a substantial amount of money and lawyers and time to go through the right process. So that for sure could be cleaned up. There's reforms that could happen, but that happens at Congress.
Right.
You know,
Yes.
that's not the state of Colorado's playground. It really needs to happen at that federal level. So yes, things are not great all the time, but that doesn't mean the state of Colorado gets to make its own treaties or have its own trade deals or make their own immigration laws. And so we just need to make sure we're really clear on this. And so what we're doing with this lawsuit, we're supporting a lawsuit. It's actually some of our sheriff, our undersheriff, and one of the captains in their personal capacity are suing the state. We're supporting it as commissioners. And they're just basically saying this law that Colorado enacted is very vague. And what we're seeing is our Attorney General there was a signal chat where the Colorado State Patrol, which is overseen by the governor, that's his realm, that's his authority, Eagle County, which is a Democrat-led county, Aspen PD, and Mesa County, they were all in a signal chat for drug enforcement. And it was, in the long run, ended up being used for immigration enforcement. Well, Phil Weiser is now targeting one of our deputies, and he is saying, I'm taking this deputy to court civilly. And the Colorado state law had enacted, if you're talking or communicating with federal immigration enforcement, then you can personally be held accountable. And there can be a fine up to $50,000 per incident. And so there's a lot of things wrong with this.
No kidding.
And there's lots of layers to it. It is complex, I get it. But one, Phil Weiser, our Attorney General, he should be upholding the law, but it seems like we're just being politically targeted, since no other officer on that signal chat has been sued either. Kind of, you wonder, is this politically motivated? Is this are you politically targeting Mesa County when other people were on this chat doing similar things? It makes you wonder. And then second, we're punishing law enforcement officers for doing their job. That has massive consequences. There's not going to be people signing up wanting to be a law enforcement officer when they could be potentially charged with $50,000 per incident. I mean, their whole livelihoods could be destroyed, their houses could be gone, just because they're communicating with federal agents. And I think that is problematic. And then two, the law is written very vaguely. So we want to make sure we're getting clarity in federal courts on that clarity. And that's why Mesa County is supporting this Mesa County-led effort in this lawsuit with our sheriff's
And does it have anything to do with the fact that Mesa County is a non-sanctuary county, and the state, they're a sanctuary state, and Denver is a sanctuary city? I mean, does that again overstep?
We politically do not align. We have different ways of a political philosophy that is very opposite from Denver and how they've handled things. We were the first county to be a non-sanctuary county, and basically with that resolution had said is we're not going to spend tax dollars. And actually it was really interesting because Denver was flooded with non-Americans, and they had very clearly, in response to Donald Trump when he was in office the first time, they had welcomed people with open arms. And I mean, that's really unsustainable. You know, how are you going to keep that up? I mean, you're a state playing with immigration. It's not like you're a whole country. This is a state. And so, and then Denver just doubled down. We're a sanctuary city. And those kind of resources are limited. And so Denver was accused of busing them to other places. And so that was really, wow, we've got to make sure that we're really clear that where we're at financially. We do not have a cushion where we could even think about allocating dollars, that it's just locked up. I mean, it's going to other things. And I think just being really clear about our resources and the community's resources. I think between Community Hospital and St. Mary's, they were already at an $18 million deficit when it comes to uninsured. So they're tapped out. The school district has no money.
We know that.
Yes. You know, so there's just not a lot of wiggle room to absorb something like that. And so we were very clear with our non-sanctuary county resolution, and then shortly after that we had sued the state, and we had joined other counties in doing so when it came to that law. And then here we are, a year later, our officer is being civilly sued. And so we're just wanting the federal courts to take a look at this to make sure that this law is just. It's been equally applied, and it truly is frustrating that the state is making these laws on a national issue that they do not have really any control over this topic. And yes, if there are frustrations in immigration and reform that need to happen, then there's a vehicle for that, and that's in Congress. And so I think elevating that conversation to the place that it needs to be, instead of tinkering at it at a state level, is probably the best way to go about doing something like this.
And so you have filed.
Well, we
Not yet?
approved the lawsuit to move forward with under the county and our financial support in it, and we want our lawyers to be able to be available to support our sheriff's office in that realm, and so that was the action that was taken on Tuesday, and they were about 80% good with the lawsuit. They had to work through some finer points, but that should be coming soon this week. So
Good,
Good.
good. Get things tied up and moved on.
yes.
Well, Ruth has an issue in an
Yes,
area
Ruth.
that's by her house. And just kind of wondering what the thought process is on
Sure.
that.
Yep.
So,
Because our county is low on funds,
and our city is low on
and our
funds.
city is low on funds, right now, and this happens to affect me directly because I live in the area, there is a process going on of a roundabout and bike lanes and pedestrian pathways being put forth on between 31 Road and Hoover Drive, which is just a small section, but we know after that it's going to take it from Hoover Drive clear to 30 Road. We understand that the county and the city are jointly in on this to get this project taken care of. Why are we spending the dollars on that when the dollars need to go elsewhere? What made that a priority?
Well, I can't specifically speak to that. I would want to get you the facts to who's responsible for that and make sure I'm giving accurate information to that. But just in general, in road and bridge and projects that we do, we have long-term range capital projects that we want to make sure that we're being really thoughtful when it comes to what roads get a slurry seal, what roads get paved. And it's a huge investment that we already have in our roads, in our county roads, and we want to make sure that we're doing right by our constituents. We've developed a pretty comprehensive way to determine the needs, and we have ratings that we want to make sure that we're hitting across the county, and we just revamped our road system where we're tracking to see the grades. And so it's like, okay, well, if this road is failing, we need to make sure that we're taking care of that road, and also upkeeping roads that we've just did. So we want to make sure that they're in good condition too. So it is a pretty extensive process, and I want to make sure I give you guys the best information. But I will tell you, if it's with the city, there are some big projects that we've had in the past that we have worked with the city on and shared in costs. And it's better when you can share in costs when two bigger, larger government entities can take equal amounts, and then you can tackle some bigger, larger projects. I will tell you that working with municipalities and cities, they develop what they want their roads to look like, and then for the most part, they can annex. That's the powers that a city or municipality has. They can annex. And so you have to have a cooperating relationship where their certain standards can be met. If they're going to annex a subdivision or a road, they want to make sure it's up to their standards. Some might look a little different than what the county's standards are. And so we do have to find like a middle ground. And so oftentimes if it's close to the city's boundaries, we're working off of their standards, not necessarily what the county standards are, but that looks a little different for what municipality of Fruita is going to be requesting, and that looks a little different, like sidewalks and right away, you know, so it is a little different when working with each municipality on that. There's little that we don't control any of the municipalities, I will tell you that. And so there is some frustration, you know, I get it. But we also want to be good partners and do right by those city or municipalities that are going to be annexing.
And that's
what's
what-
the advantage to that for the county?
Nothing.
See, you're losing your tax
much.
base if they're annexed. And the
No,
thing
I mean,
about
it's fine because, I mean, they do take over, in theory, they will annex and then they will be the ones providing the snow removal, taking care of that road, providing those local services to those folks. And we have no say for their annexation powers within a certain boundary area. And we know as they grow and that urban growth boundary grows, there will be annexing more. And so it's good for us to work together to make sure that when they do annex that road, it's up to their standards. And so we try and meet them where we can.
just seems odd that you would partner in that, and yet Patterson Road is in desperate need of a lot. I think of that stretch between 29 and 31 Road on Patterson needs a lot of help.
It does.
And-
And it's good, but then when you look at like Orchard Avenue, I mean, they didn't even have sidewalks, you know, and so
Right.
it's like, okay, well, let's do what we can in Orchard Avenue. Let's make sure they have sidewalks. We've been really blessed to be able to secure a lot of grant funding for some of those projects and even congressional direct spending to make sure that, yes, Patterson sometimes does look rough, but then when you look at other areas, you're like, ooh, they have no sidewalks, and that's a big area for our kids going to school, and we want to make sure that they do at least have a sidewalk. So it's looking at a lot of the bigger picture areas, and yeah, I mean, I wish we could all make it look, snap our fingers and make it all great and stuff, but
It's just that priorities seem to me like they're a
Yes.
little askew, but then I'm not sitting there
And then
behind
too-
the
yeah.
desk either.
And we can't always coordinate with the municipality on what their priorities is. So our capital improvement projects are going to look a lot different than what is important to Palisade and what's going to be important to Fruta. And so their timelines might not be the same as ours, but we're trying to be like good partners with them. And two, smaller local governments, they're working off of some tighter budgets. And so when you're trying to work with Palisade, they don't have tons of dollars coming in, and this might have been a project that they've been working on for 25 years. We're just now seeing it, and so we're really just making sure, yes, it might not have been on the county's radar, but it was important to them, and so we want to meet them where they're at.
Because I think right now, the city stops at 29 Road. This is clear to 31 Road. There is a 2-mile
And
stretch
then you
in there.
have CDOT is a whole other ball of
Oh,
wax.
yeah,
too.
you don't even go see that.
Yes.
Oh,
So
mercy.
there's this other layer of entity that is taking care of roads and interstates and highways, and then they have their own project and timelines and things like that. And so there is a lot of moving parts. And again, we want to be good partners. But yeah, there's frustration, you know, and I testify to the Transportation Commission and making sure that we get dollars here because, you know, the populations have a large pool in where a lot of that funding goes. And
You mean just the size of the
yeah,
population?
I mean, if you
or-
look at the
okay.
state of Colorado, the pool of funding is going to go towards the more populated areas
course.
often. And so we want to make sure that at least Mesa County is at that table. We're advocating for our rural county roads, for our citizens to be able to have good roads. And then, you know, we're talking about farm to market roads. Like, sure, we might not have the population, but we're the ones making the food. We have the beef production. You know, we've got a lot of exports we have to get to market. And then also, yeah, we might not have the population, but everybody loves to come and be a tourist.
Right.
And
use the road.
yes,
Yeah.
and we're working all the time, you know, with the United States Forest Service, the BLM, our public lands, to make sure, yes, we might not have the population, but everybody comes to play here. And so we have to account for more fair spending where dollars are allocated, especially when it comes to some of those transportation funding. So it's all part of the conversation for sure, and we do our best to be at the table and really express Mesa County's concerns.
Well, and I guess that kind of goes, we had Chaz Evanson on the other day and talking about if he were governor, and it sounds a little, comes back
I think we all kind
around.
of think that. If
But
I were governor,
If I were.
what would
Yeah,
I do?
yes, exactly. But one of his things is when he was passing things, not letting the urban centers have all of the say by going to all of the counties and asking the county commissioners before he signed off on a bill saying, how does this impact you? Is this bill going to be the best for the counties as a whole? Because we do have different things. We might not have the population, but I know in Ruth's statement, the new roundabout that they're considering isn't going to be big enough to take on trucks. And like you had out in Fruita, I think it was, where the truckers said, you can't tell us we can't use this route. And so I'm wondering if the county looks at all of those factors.
Those little
when
nuances
they're
that are.
putting in their share of the money, or if they're just saying, the city said we want to do this and we're going to annex this property. And they also had another problem at the meeting with a piece of property. The guy goes, that's where I live.
He didn't even know it.
Oops.
And so
all of a sudden he's looking at either I go along with it or they're going to do eminent domain. That's another.
because they kind of said that to him, didn't they, Ruth? 'Cause she was
Basically,
at the
yes.
meeting.
They didn't really come out and say that, but they definitely
So
alluded
this
to
was
that subject.
a meeting at the city.
No, this was a meeting at Book Cliff School
Okay.
that the engineers came in. They had all the plans all drawn up like they always do.
Okay.
They presented it as a fact that was going to happen. We had no say at that particular time. They said, well, you did have a couple of years ago, we did have like our pop-ups in the city, but we did have a little something going around. Well, we got a letter this time. We heard nothing about it before. So, those are issues that I have.
That is tough.
The people weren't informed. The people had no voice. It was done before that, anything was said. And the people who are actually hurt by this situation or definitely involved in the situation were not notified or notified to the last moment that this was going to take place. It doesn't set well with me. So anyway,
I get
that's
that.
my beef.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I do. I understand.
Well, and that's what I wondered, when you have partnerships like that, are all of the sides represented, or do you think that's just not reasonable to have all the sides represented?
Well, I think you would like to make the best effort to bring people to the table. I think sometimes one siloed spot of engineers are only thinking about the engineer plans, and then you have some other department is thinking about this one part. And so I think it is beneficial to have that more global perspective of how this is affecting the community and what this means to the community. And
Well, I think a lot of that, this engineer is from the Eastern Slope. Again, we don't have our own engineers doing anything
Yeah.
that live here and know what the situation is. So that's another thing that kind of gets under my
yeah.
belt, kind of like a burr under the saddle.
And it's tough too. I've noticed that if you're dealing with different entities, so if it's at the state level or federal level, they have really high qualifications and oftentimes a lot of red tape to jump through for contract work or things like that. So we often, if it's working with the state, we're like, why can't we just use our engineers or someone local? And sometimes you just can't because it's built into the recipe, I guess. You will use so-and-so, you will use this level of engineering. Like I'm not saying specifically that's what it is,
Right.
but there are contract requirements that you kind of have to hit, and so sometimes like federal government, you're dealing with the Davis-Bacon Act, and you're like, okay, like there's a whole other
That's a
ball
whole
of
nother
wax,
layer.
that it's not always as easy to get some of this stuff done,
And it's just knowing all of it. Half of it is I don't know how you keep up. I'm not kidding. It is, there's
It
so
boggles
much,
the
and then
mind.
you start looking at, well, there's, like you said, there's this act, and you're going, how would the average person know that there was that act? And all they know is the county's not listening. But I do have to say that I think both the city and the county are making a concerted effort to be transparent and to be open and honestly answer, and when there's things they can't control. But I also feel like what you're doing too is, if you see it doesn't seem quite right and there is a way, and it might not be a huge change you can make, but to make any change that makes it more affordable or makes it more palatable to people, or you see, maybe you don't see this benefit, but this is the benefit overall, that you all are trying to do that. So
Yeah, at least-
we appreciate that.
And communicating it, that's the whole thing.
And just letting us be
Communication is
heard.
such a key,
Yeah.
such a key.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really important. We try. That was a big thing for me. It was to have open communication and just to increase that line of communication. We have our newsletters now, so anybody can sign up for those weekly newsletters, which
And the
I
little
think are,
videos.
yes,
I
and
like the videos.
we've leaned into a lot of video. We know that the medium is changing on how people are getting their news.
That's right.
And some people would love to watch just a short video, and then it can capture, what's happening a little bit better or in their preference. And I think that making sure that we're doing print, that we're communicating our public hearings in video, we can bring the town hall or the town square to someone's inbox, I think has some valuable insight to make them, feel more included. And
It does indeed, because people like to be able to see eye to eye. They like to
Yes.
watch your expressions and see if it matches what comes out of the mouth.
And see what the intent
Sure,
was.
yeah.
You have a little bit
Exactly.
longer, you can see, well, if you have just a clip,
yeah.
you can't tell, well, what was the intent? You just have just the facts, ma'am.
Yes.
Just not
Yes.
the heart.
Yeah.
And there's
it's
a lot
hard.
of heart.
It
Yeah,
is
it is. It's tough, and sometimes, with I'll do interviews, and I'll spend 30 minutes doing an interview covering a topic, and they'll take one sentence,
Yeah.
maybe at that, and then
Right.
and that's the news coverage, and they'll tell the story, and it's good, it's not bad or anything, but it's always good when you can put out, here's the facts, and then reach the person directly. And everything else is great too. If you can get TV, you can get something printed in the paper, or somebody can, if you can communicate that to journalism and journalists and stuff, like that's all good too. But I really want to make sure that our residents are hearing straight from us, and they're getting communication weekly about what we're doing. And if they have any questions, they can email us. And this isn't the federal government, this isn't even the state government, this is your local government, and you can pick up the phone and call me. And I hope people, even people that disagree, we get tons of emails for folks that may not understand a subject or they want clarity, and I think that's a real benefit, that they would even email us
Right,
and
exactly.
ask, hey, I heard this and this doesn't make sense, and then if it's something that I can look into, oftentimes it's the planning, Mason County Planning Department or code enforcement, or something I can go in and ask for more information and then get them clarity that maybe they're missing, and I think that's a real benefit.
I do too.
It is, indeed.
Anything else you want to talk about, Ruth?
No, I think I've covered my my
Your issue?
belly
Okay.
aching, if nothing else.
Well, and I'll find out more information too on
Okay,
that
Bobbie.
that
Thank you.
specific area. But yeah.
Well, anything else you want to add that we left out?
Just check out mesacounty.us. There is a plethora of information. We do have our Fund It or Fix It campaign around our unfunded mandates, and you can dive deep into any of the topics that we talked about with unfunded mandates. And I think that's really powerful because you can see how it affects each Mesa County department. And then if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to any of our commissioners. Sign up for our newsletter. You can get that delivered to your inbox weekly.
Great.
I think that covers it.
Oh,
Very
okay.
good.
Well, thank you, Bobbie.
Thanks,
You
guys.
have been watching Mesa County Compass. This is the facts as we see them, the truth as we know it. You decide.